What's going on, y'all? I know it's been a while, but with us being at around the midpoint of the season, I figured this was the perfect time to kind of go in and give some of these teams a mid-season review. And today we're going to be starting off with the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm thinking, where better to start than with the off-season acquisitions that we brought in this season. So to kick it off, let's start by looking at Klay Thompson. Now, it's a little bit of a weird season to kind of evaluate. When you think Klay Thompson, you can't help but think about the player that was on the Warriors winning championships, all-star, 37 points in a quarter, that guy. He's not that player anymore. This season, I think he's been better than he was last year at defense. I wouldn't go as far to say that he's a good defender, but I wouldn't really say he's been a bad defender either. He's had bad moments. He's had really good moments. Overall, I think he's been decent enough on the defensive side of the ball. Definitely better than he was last season. And then on the offensive side of the ball, when you take into account that he's just not the player he used to be, he's been pretty good, Maybe not the full height of what you wanted or what we wanted him to be on the Mavericks. I wouldn't say that I had higher expectations for him because I really didn't. I didn't have super high expectations for him, but I did have higher hopes for him, I hoped that he would be this really good player for us, but I didn't necessarily expect it. But that being said, I think he's been a pretty darn good player. To start off the year, he had like 3 really good games, if I remember correctly. And then he kind of slumped a little bit and then, had a game here or there to remind you who he was. But it wasn't looking that good. And then he kind of got his feet back under him. Shots started to go in. And then in the most recent sample size, I think in their last 5 games, he's been a little hit or miss. He had, 25 against Denver? Just let me check on that. Yeah, just recently he had 25 points against Denver. But he also had a game against Portland where he only had 3 points and missed every 3 he took. So, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag lately. But he's gotten that 3-point percentage up a little bit, right around 38%, which, is good. That's a good shooter to have. But when you think Klay Thompson, you want that to be in the 40s, and, he's barely shooting 41% from the field right now. So, not a great season from Klay Thompson, but given where he's at in his career, I think it's decent. And hopefully, once Luka comes back, he'll be getting better looks from 3, and that percentage will continue to go up. Hopefully, that's my hope. But for now, I'd say a solid year from Klay Thompson. Not great, but not bad. A solid year. Next, we're going to focus on the acquisition that I think I was most excited about this offseason, and that's Quentin Grimes. I always liked Grimes when he was in New York. He kind of inexplicably played terrible when he was with Detroit. Very small sample size. What was it? Yeah, he only played 6 games in Detroit, but he did not look good. So his stock was a little bit low. He had just been traded. He wasn't having the best year in New York. And then, getting traded and then having those 6 bad games in Detroit. So his stock was a little bit low, but I had always liked him and I had high hopes for him on this team. And he's been really good so far this season. I actually almost made a video about him a few weeks ago about how good he's been. But, I shelved it because I'm lazy. But he's been shooting really well, both from the field and from 3. I've been really impressed with his ability to create his own 3-point shot. I've seen him hit a lot of step backs, especially earlier in the season. He's just been really good for this team so far. To start the year off for like the first half of November, it was kind of frustrating because he wasn't really getting a lot of minutes. But then it seemed like halfway through the year, Jason Kidd realized, Quentin Grimes is good at basketball. So he started getting more minutes, more opportunity, having good games here and there. And then recently with Luka and Kyrie out, he's had some games where he's stepped up and, had some 20-point games, been a big piece of the offense. At the time of recording, he did just have like a day-to-day back injury, missed the game against the Hornets, but he should be back in no time and hopefully continues to kill it. Next, that brings us to Najee Marshall, who was kind of the Derrick Jones Jr. replacement coming into this season. And Derrick Jones Jr. has been good for the Clippers this year, but looking at them side by side, I think I rather have Najee Marshall. There's some pros and cons for either player. Last year, Derrick Jones Jr. kind of provided an extra lob threat for Luka on the court. But I think especially during this most recent stretch with Luka being out, Najee Marshall's ability to kind of be more of a creator on offense is more valuable than Derek Jones' ability to catch lobs. And obviously, that's a very reductionist view on their games. They both have a lot of other stuff to offer. I think Najee Marshall is a little bit more of a solid three-point shooter. If you look at his percentage this season, you wouldn't necessarily think that. But when you take into account that in the first 6 games of the season, he didn't hit a single three. He missed every single three he took in the first 6 games. So if you kind of throw those first 6 games out and butter knife his stats a little bit, he's shooting a very respectable percentage from 3. And I think me, like a lot of people, were kind of surprised to see the kind of ISO game that Najee Marshall has. I knew he was a good player. I'd seen him play a little bit, but I didn't watch a ton of Pelicans last year. But I always liked him. But this year, I got to see him, get loose a little bit with the ball, especially in that second half of the first month. I think at the end of November, he had like 4 straight 20-plus point games, and his floaters looked really good. He's got a nice floater, and his shot's been coming along. He did have a little bit of injury trouble. What month was that? Beginning of December, around there. But he's come back, and he's starting to get his flow again. And, he has some bad games offensively where it's like, 4 of 12 from the field or 3 of 12. I don't know why I said 12 both times. But yeah, he's been really good. He's averaging 10 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He's just playing really good basketball. Good defender. I think Derek Jones Jr. is probably a better defender. I might have already said that, but he definitely holds his own on defense, and I like what he brings on the offensive side. Really good player for the Mavericks. And that brings us to the final notable acquisition from this offseason, and that's bringing back Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on Spencer Dinwiddie, probably more than most people, because there's some games where I'm like, that's right, Spencer Dinwiddie's that guy. And then there's other games where I'm like, why the fuck is Spencer Dinwiddie on the court? What I will say about Spencer Dinwiddie, for better or worse, he is not afraid to take big shots. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you really do need that. And other times, you need him to be a little bit more afraid of those shots, because it's like, I forget who it was. It wasn't against the Thunder. I think it was one of the games against the Nuggets. No, I think it was the one against the Pelicans. Like, sure, he had 20 points that game, but he shot 35%. And in the fourth quarter, let me just make sure that's the game I'm thinking of. Yeah. Okay, so in the fourth quarter of this game, Spencer Dinwiddie, there were multiple plays where, for the full duration of the shot clock, Spencer Dinwiddie was dribbling the ball, halfway between the three-point line and half court, just dribbling it for 15 seconds, and then goes into an ISO step-back 3. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, move the ball. Any possession where one person touches the ball for the whole time and you took the whole shot clock, that's a terrible possession. Like, I don't even like when Luka does that. And Luka Doncic is Luka Doncic. So, you'll live with it a little bit more than Spencer Dinwiddie, but one person touching the ball in like a full 24-second shot clock, that's a terrible possession. I don't care who it is. Also, Jaden Hardy was cooking that game in the third quarter. How come he couldn't get any minutes at the end of the fourth quarter? It's not like we were trying to lose. We're not a tanking team. We're trying to win games. Jaden Hardy was having a really good game. But Jason Kidd just rode with Spencer Dinwiddie. And you could argue that, like, Spencer Dinwiddie's more of a point guard. That's why he wanted him in there. But Dinwiddie was not being a point guard in that game. He was trying to get his shot off and be the hero. And it was not working out. Now, that being said, Dinwiddie did also have a stretch in that game, I think, in the third quarter, where he did have like 3 straight buckets. So Dinwiddie's kind of the new Tim Hardaway Jr. He's shooting below 40% this season. And he has moments that make you tear your hair out, but he also has moments where you're screaming at the TV with joy, not anger. So overall, I really like Spencer Dinwiddie. And now that Kyrie Irving's back, I don't think we'll have to deal with as much ill-advised ISO step-back threes late in the game. But yeah, Dinwiddie's a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall, I like having Dinwiddie on the team. I said this before the season started. He adds to our depth. And, he's been a starter on the team for a good stretch of games now with Kyrie and Luka out. And, he's there. He's a good player for us. A frustrating one at times, but overall, I think he's a positive. He does get in the way of Jaden Hardy's minutes a little bit. But, what are you going to do? All right, so I took a long time on those acquisitions. So now let's look at the record overall as a whole. I think just like a week ago, the Mavericks were 5th in the West. Now they're down to 7th, which isn't too bad. That's in the playoffs, right? Nowadays, in the play-in, 7, 8, 9, 10 play-in tournament. So we're right behind the Lakers. Hopefully now with Kyrie back, we'll kind of surge ahead a little bit. Get back into the guaranteed playoffs rather than the play-in. But also, the Golden State Warriors are 11th, and they're only 14 games behind first place, and we're 12 and a half. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. A couple more bad games, and you could find yourself out of that play-in. So hopefully, now that Kyrie's back, we'll kind of be moving forward again. But the record's not where you'd want it to be. A team that was just in the finals, has championship aspirations. This is not where you'd want to see your record. But Luka's been out for quite a while, almost a month at this point. So, you understand it. I like getting to see the other players play without Luka and Kyrie, see them take on bigger roles, see what they can do. They played some good games, but, they have trouble closing it out, which makes sense, Kyrie and Luka are your closers. So, it's hard for those other guys to take it on, especially when Spencer Dinwiddie's throwing up step-back threes all the time. That's the last shot I take at Spencer Dinwiddie. I like Spencer Dinwiddie. I really do. It might not seem like that right now, but I do. But yeah, so hopefully they can get the record back on track. It's not the worst thing in the world. A good second half, get back up to the 5th, 4th seed, maybe. Maybe even 3rd. It's doable. Probably not 3rd, but I think they could get up to as high as 5 or 4. If I had to make a prediction, where are they going to end the season? I think I would say... I'll say 5. I want to say 4, but I know I'm a biased fan, so I'm going to say 5. I'm going to say they're going to end the season at 5. That'll be my prediction. All right, now, I know I just touched on it a little bit, but next I kind of wanted to focus on injuries. So basically just how have injuries affected the team season so far? Who's been injured? How much have they been injured? Stuff like that, To start off, let's start with Dante Exum. Dante Exum has missed the entire season so far, which is really a bummer because he was a really good player for us last season. He'd been out of the league for at least 2 seasons, 2 full seasons, and he came back, was really good, was a good 3-point shooter on low volume, didn't take a ton of them, but shot him at a good percentage, could play point guard, could play small forward, kind of had like this weird role for a while where he was basically the point guard for most of the second quarter and then just like didn't play the rest of the game. But then his role kind of evolved as the season went on and became a really big piece of this team. Although he did miss quite a bit of time last season too. So hopefully he'll come back and we'll see the player that we saw last season. That's my hope. I really hope that Dante Exum can come back and prove that he can still contribute to this team. Next, I think we should probably focus on the big injury that's probably on everyone's mind, and that's Luka Doncic. Got hurt on, December 26th maybe, and said he'd be reevaluated in a month. A month is almost up, not quite, but we're coming up on that, so he should be reevaluated soon, and hopefully the reevaluation is good, reevaluated doesn't mean that he'll be back. So hopefully he's able to come back sooner rather than later. Hopefully it's like reevaluated and then it's like, okay, he'll be back in 2 weeks, maybe. I don't know if that's too optimistic, but I really hope we see him back out there. Because even though this season maybe wasn't what we've become accustomed to from Luka, he's still one of the best players in the league. There's not very many people that are better than him. And in any given game, no matter who's on the court, he can be the best player in the league. It doesn't matter if we're playing the Nuggets and we're playing Jokic. Luka can be the best player in that game. Jokic is the best player in the world, but in a single game, Luka can be the best player in any game. It almost feels like I'm kind of forgetting what it looks like when Luka plays. You know, it feels like it's been so long since I watched him play, and it really hasn't even been a month yet. But yeah, I just want to see him get back on the floor and hopefully kind of integrate back in with these guys. They've been doing a good job with him out. I've liked what I've seen, and hopefully he can kind of come back and complement what they've been doing and help get certain guys better looks, you know, get the lobs going again. But, hopefully get well soon, Luka. Now, at the time of recording this, Derek Lively is injured. He got hurt just recently. It's like a day-to-day one. He's missed a couple games. I think he missed a couple games earlier in the year, but he's played at least 3/4 of the game so far. So, you know, he's been healthy pretty much for the most part this year. And he's been really good. He's had some really big games as of late. He had like 21 and 16 the other night. Obviously, his game continues to grow, continues to develop. He'll have games where he looks really good, other games where it's like, he didn't really do much, or, he got in foul trouble this game. But overall, I like what I've seen from Derek Lively. He's a really good player. Jaden Hardy has a day-to-day injury right now, but he's been healthy all year. I like what I've seen from him, especially as of late. And he should be fine going forward. We already touched on Najee Marshall's injury a little bit. He missed some time in November, but for the most part, he's been around. He's been healthy. He's been good for us. And the only other really big one, I think, is Kyrie Irving. He missed, I think it was like 2 weeks. And he just came back, and he's looked pretty good. He did miss 2 air balls today. Well, of course he missed them. They were air balls. He shot 2 air balls today in relatively close fashion. That's not the right word, but whatever. You know, so shaking the rust off a little bit, obviously. But there's no concerns. He's Kyrie Irving. But, you know, his presence was missed. But if he has a healthy season going forward, plays 90% of the games going forward, you know, that'll be a good season from Kyrie Irving. That'll be a lot of games played. He should qualify for, you know, all the awards, all the All-NBA, stuff like that. Not saying that he'll win it. I'm just saying that he'll play the 65 games necessary. I think he will. Luka, probably not. I don't know if it is. It might be possible, technically. But Luka's probably not hitting the 65 games. But I think Kyrie Irving will. And even if he doesn't, it'll be close. All right, now, so between the acquisitions and talking about the injuries, I've kind of touched on most of the players on the team so far, but there's a few I haven't really hit yet. Those being PJ Washington, who, I gotta be honest, I love PJ Washington. He's become my favorite player on the Mavericks. I love watching him play, the energy that he has, the passion. He just has a really great presence on the court. He has games where he looks, I don't want to say unstoppable, but he has games where he looks really good out there. And he also has possessions where he looks really good on defense. I love what he brings to this team. He's been a pretty good three-point shooter this year, at right in between 37 and 38%. Not elite, but that's really good for him on like about 4 a game. I love what I've seen from him, especially with Luka and Kyrie out. He's had some big games. Sometimes he kind of fades into the background, but he's never doing anything to hurt the team, I feel like, at least. Now, I talked about Jaden Hardy briefly earlier, but I wanted to touch on him again a little bit. So his season's been a little bit of a mixed bag, kind of between not getting a lot of minutes in some games, not getting into some games. But recently, with Kyrie and Luka out, he was having some really good performances. Like I said earlier, I think it was against the Pelicans. He had 21 points. He had a string of good scoring games before that. small sample size, only 10 games, but from, what was it, December 28th to January 15th, he was averaging 13 points on almost 50% from the field and 52% from three. So obviously that's not sustainable. But he was playing really well, and he had some big performances in there. 21 points against the Pelicans, 25 against Portland, 17 against Cleveland, 15 against Memphis, 15 against the Lakers, 11-11. So he was looking good. Unfortunately, he got hurt against OKC, which I kind of missed. I didn't realize that he got hurt. I was kind of like, why isn't he playing? But I guess he got injured in that game. He missed the game against the Hornets that they just played today at the time of recording. But overall, yeah, I like what I've seen from Jaden Hardy. I hope his role and his game continue to grow and develop. I would love to see him become like a bona fide scorer off the bench. Maybe not even off the bench one day in the starting lineup. That'd be great. Probably not. I think he'll probably fit in nicely as a kind of six-man scorer. But I really like what I've seen from him. Before I get to the last guy, I just want to mention Maxi Kleber real quick, just so no one says I didn't mention Maxi Kleber. Maxi Kleber's great. Plays great defense. We all know that. His three-point shot has been not great this season. Sometimes I joke that he's a stretch big who can't stretch. But, I like Maxi Kleber. He plays hard, plays good defense. I like the versatility that he brings. But it hasn't been his best season. Hopefully he can continue to grow and not grow, but, kind of get back on track, hopefully. But I like Maxi Kleber. Big Maxi Kleber fan. Sort of. But that brings us to the last guy I want to talk about, and that's Daniel Gafford. Daniel Gafford has been really good this season. Just today, against the Hornets, he had 31 points and 7 blocks. We lost, but that was a really good game. He's been having some big scoring performances lately, and he's shooting above 70% as of right now. So yeah, he's a player I love to watch play. He does so much on the court. He anchors the defense, block shots, all that. He grabs rebounds. He's a reliable finisher around the rim. He's a lob threat. He's not quite the passer that Derek Lively is, but he's improved on that from last year, I feel like, personally. There was a game where, in the finals, afterwards, they were doing an interview, and Draymond Green, of all people, was giving him some advice, and I feel like he's kind of taken that a little bit. He's kind of gotten better about not throwing the ball away when he's at the top of the key. Not that he was throwing it away all the time, but, I've seen him make some nice passes. I wouldn't go as far to say that he's a good passer. I wouldn't say that. I would just say that he's improved on it a little bit. Derek Lively, I would say, is a good passer. Not a playmaker, but a good passer. But yeah, I love watching Daniel Gafford. He's relentless around the rim. He just does so many good things for this team. And honestly, if I had to give out an MVP award for the season so far, it should probably go to Kyrie Irving. And this might be recency bias, but shoot, I feel like I'd give it to Daniel Gafford right now. He's just been so good. He's anchored the defense. He's been in darn near every game. He's played in 41 games out of what, 43? So he's only missed like 2 games. Grabs rebounds, blocks shots, puts the ball in the basket when he needs to. So yeah, I might give him my midseason Mavericks MVP award. That might be silly. It should probably go to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's been there in most games. He's been great this season, been a great player. But I think kind of in the cumulative sense, Daniel Gafford has kind of been the most valuable player for the team this season. Not missing time, playing great whenever he's out there. And he's had some really big performances as of late to help that recency bias in my head. But yeah, take this with a grain of salt. Like, mid-season MVP, like, that literally means nothing, right? We all know Luka's the best player on this team, and then it's Kyrie Irving. And then, I don't know, who is it after that? Probably Derek Lively. But I just want to appreciate what Daniel Gafford has done this season. He's been awesome for this team. So, overall, The Mavericks this season, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some cause for concern, obviously, with them being the 7th seed right now, but I think they can get back on track. Kyrie's back. Hopefully, Luka will be back relatively soon. My camera's dying, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. This kind of turned into a darn near whole podcast episode. But the Mavericks have been not disappointing this year, but not like great, because obviously you'd want them to be higher in the standings. But I like what I've seen from a lot of these players, and I think they're going to end up fine. Like I said earlier, I think I predicted them to be the 5th seed, and I stand by that, especially if Kyrie comes back, Luka comes back, everyone keeps playing well. I think there's not really any cause for concern. I think they could give these teams like the Thunder a little bit of trouble. Now, the Thunder are really good. That'll be a whole can of worms to dive into for another day. But I like what the Mavericks have done so far. The record as of late has been shaky. In their last 10 games, they're 3-7. I think that will improve, especially now that Kyrie's back. And then hopefully Luka can join them. And it should be a good rest of the year. But yeah, this one kind of went on really long. That's all I really had for you guys. If you liked the video, give it a like. It really helps me out. Let me know what you think about the Mavericks down below. Let me know any teams that you might want to have me do a mid-season review of. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'd appreciate it. Or don't if you don't want to. That's fine too. But yeah, I'll see you guys later. In the words of my big red friend over there, I'll see you guys later. Peace.